Up next, we have Ryan Welcher with the Block Developer Cookbook WCEH 2025 edition. At WordCamp Canada, Ryan is bringing his Block Developer Cookbook home to Canada for its Ottawa debut. This interactive workshop puts attendees in the driver's seat. You will vote on which recipes to explore and work through them live with Ryan's guidance. Each edition of the workshop grows with new content showcasing the latest WordPress features and APIs, like the Interactivity API and the Block Bindings API, while focusing on practical, real-world examples that you can use in your projects right away. Take it away, Ryan.
Thank you. Do I need to turn this on? Can you hear me okay? Or is this thing on? Hello, hello. Okay. Can you hear me okay? Can talk? Yeah? Yeah?
It's a little quiet.
It's a little quiet? It's a little quiet in the back?
The
Okay.
door has to stay open.
All right, how about, we'll try this. How about that?
That's better.
Okay, because I have to type and talk. Thank you for coming. So this is the Block Developer Cookbook. This is a workshop that I've been lucky enough to do on every flagship this year, and now the new flagship, which will be Canada when Matt gets here, right? Yeah, so we're going to do things a little bit differently this time, because normally what we would do is we would go to blockdevelopercookbook.com, you'd create an account, we would vote on the recipes that we're going to work on together, and then I will live code them, and you'll watch me do horrible typos and break at least 5 builds, and do that. But because we're kind of on a shorter timeline today, I thought instead of voting and chewing up some time doing that, I'll just kind of go through as many examples as we can. So yeah, so if you did want to follow along at home, in the audience, you can check out the repository right there, which is the same repository that I'm going to be working from. And there's a local development environment in there. If you just want to watch me code poorly for 45 minutes, I welcome you to do that. So let's take, oh, sorry, let me get out here. So I'm just going to switch around. Let me know if I need to zoom this in. So this is the Block Developer Cookbook. The site is always up, always active. You can create an account if you want. And these are the recipes. They're ordered from least amount of time to most amount of time. It's I'm really forcing the cook analogy. We have number of cooks is the skill level. 1 is sort of like beginner-ish. 3 is the hardest, I guess. And some ingredients. So if you're sort of like wanted to know more about, for example, block variations or block bindings or the data layer, you can kind of streamline these to your own interest level. So my one question to you is, do you want to start with the ones that take the least amount of time and work that way? Or do you want to work from the most amount of time backwards? Most amount of time will probably mean we'll get 1 recipe done. The other way we'll probably get like 3 or 4 done. So show of hands, smallest to largest. Show of hands, largest to smallest. Okay, I don't know, that looked exactly the same to me. So, Stefan, you get to pick.
Let's go with 1 small one and then.
Oh, we're gonna throw it like that. Okay, great, that's great. Okay, so I'm gonna do the first one called preset block bindings with variations. I love this one, it's super simple, but it is a massive time saver for those that work with clients who are constantly messing up UI things. And no client has ever done that, so why would we want? Okay, so each one of these recipes is broken down with an overview, and then there's a little setup thing. So you can run an npx script. This is the create block package with a custom template that'll give you all the files that you need. So you can run this in your own development environment, so on and so forth. I've already got this all set up, so I'm going to kind of skip this part, and then we're just going to. I'm literally going to copy and paste the code from here and talk our way through it. So the first thing, which one is this? Preset bindings with variations. Okay. So this is basically how block bindings work. So what we want to do is we're going to be registering a piece of custom post meta. So if I jump over to here and I get my code open, is that zoomed in enough? And now I have to find the preset block bindings. Okay, so in here we have some very basic code. It's all very it's all kind of pre-configured for the stuff that you don't need to worry about. And we're just going to do the other things. Hi. Yeah, sure. You can move it. You can move it closer. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, cool. So the first thing that we want to do is we're going to add just a chunk of code that's going to register a piece of post meta. This is just standard post meta that you would register normally within WordPress. And all this is going to do for us, and I'm just going to paste it into the plugin, the block registration file. In here, we're just adding the init hook. We're going to add a function. We're going to register a piece of post meta to the post type. I'm going to call it my custom data. And this is just regular REST API stuff, making sure that it's show and rest is true, and it's single, and the type is string, and we have some auth callback stuff. This is not really the point of what we're doing today, but we need this in order to move forward. So my local development environment is Studio, WordPress Studio, which is great. I love it. I use it all the time. And I'm going to create a new post in here called preset bindings. And let's see. You know what I forgot to do? And I will forget to do this every single time, is probably enable the plugin. So let's take a look. Each one of these blocks is in its own plugin. So that's not the right button. So we have all of these. I'm going to deactivate everything because clearly I used this last time I ran this. Where is it? Preset block binding. So I'll activate that. Come back. Posts. Is that zoomed in enough? Just yell if it's not zoomed in enough, and I will zoom it in enough. So we should have
Did you build it?
Probably not. Let's look. No, the build's in there. Let's just see. Is it not? What's that? Yep. It's probably it. Hold on. Yeah, it works on my machine. This is probably what it is. Let's just see. So, wait. There's no block. This is a binding, Ryan. Be smart. So what this is doing is this is just registering the post meta. So it's registered in there behind the scenes. So let's just take a look at the second step right here, which is we're going to register a block variation. So a block variation is exactly what it sounds like. It's a variation of an existing block where you can preset attributes, and that becomes super important with what we're trying to do with block bindings. So let me just show you how block bindings work with this. So if I put a paragraph tag in here, which is what this is. This should be a paragraph. I'm not going to ever spell that right. We're going to attributes. We're going to click on content. We're going to click on content again. And you see what pops up there? And that's not zoomed in enough. So this is that post meta that we just registered. So you can do this out of the box with Core. Any post meta that's been registered and is exposed to the REST API is available to be bound to a certain subset of blocks. Those blocks being the paragraph block, the heading block, image block, and button block. So we can do this every time. And now I've done that, and you can see that this is actually showing the default value of that REST thing. And the other thing is, I think I can update this as well. So if I save this now, and I switch over to preferences, and I don't know why there's not a command palette thing for this, but there should be. And we're going to pop open. So you see, this is the custom meta that I just registered, and now I'm getting that data. So this is two-way syncing. So it retrieves it, and it writes to it. And just a side note here, never leave this open when you're trying to write meta using the Gutenberg, because it'll overwrite itself, and it won't work. So we're going to turn this back off. So that is really how block bindings work. But the problem that you're always going to run into, not always, but that you may run into, is this step of having to go to attributes and choose the correct attribute that the particular block supports, and then choosing the correct post meta. And I'm saying this from the point of view of an editor or a client that maybe doesn't understand what post meta is, and that doesn't know why this is called content, and why it's got underscores in it, and what that actually represents. So what we want to do is take that guesswork away, and that's where the variations come in. So if we jump back over to the right tab, right here, we're going to just register this block variation. I'll take us through all the steps. And if I'm going too quickly, it's because I've had too much coffee, but just let me know. Okay? So register block variation is pulled in from the WordPress blocks package. It is just a JavaScript function. We're going to pass the name of the block that we want to create a variation of. And then we're going to give it its own sort of like machine-friendly name, which I'm calling show my data, but you can call it whatever you want, followed by a title, which is what will show up in the block editor, and then a description, again, which is what shows up in the block editor. And then we have a scope. So the scope is going to be, it can be added by the inserter, or it can be transformed into this block from another block. Now, right now, this isn't going to do anything. Well, it will, but it won't work. And I'll show you what I mean by that cryptic sentence in a second. So we've registered this. And if we look inside of here, we should have a show. You do have to build it. Who said that?
Oh, do I get that?
Yeah, you do. I forgot to mention this. I have WordPress, really great WordPress.com bags for anybody that has a good question or helps or saves my my presentation. So I'm going to cd into plugins, and this is, what is this thing, preset? All right, npm start. I'm just going to run that in the background. Okay. And we'll just rebuild this. And we should have a show my data. So you see this block here? This is my custom variation. Now it has a paragraph icon. Now if I insert it, watch what happens. Nothing. And that's because it doesn't know that this is supposed to be a variation, right? Because the way the variations work is they are under the hood, they are whatever block that is. But the way that you differentiate between them is done in this next step that I'm going to show you. So this is very real that you might create this variation, you might insert that block, but it's always going to show up as a paragraph block because there's no way for the block editor to know, oh, this is your variation and not just a standard old paragraph block or whatever block you're creating the variation of. So that, I think, is in this next step. Right, so we're going to add some attributes to our variation. Now, if this is looking a lot like the way you register a block, like in block.json, it's because it is. Variations just can preset certain things. So this is a big, long piece of data, but I'm going to show you why I use this right now. If I were to select my block here and come over to code editor, you see this big chunk of ridiculousness right here? This is that same thing. So what this is setting, so if you're not familiar with what we're looking at, first of all, this is how a block is saved into the post content, okay? And so anytime there are custom attributes or styles or anything like that, they're saved along with this HTML comment as JSON. So it's a big JSON object. So what this is actually defining is an attribute called metadata. Inside of it is a bindings property, inside of it is a content, inside of it is source, and it's got some other things in there. And that is the code representation of that binding that we built, right? So what we want to do is we want to put that into our variation, and that's what this is doing here. So we save attributes.metadata.binding.content.source, and then args, and then the key, and then blah, 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 right? So I'll walk us through this a little bit. Sorry, the coffee's kicking in, and I'm like, seeing sound and hearing colors. So the content is the bound attribute. So because this is a paragraph block, it stores the information that you type into it into an attribute behind the scenes called content. So then we're telling it that the source is coming from core/post meta, which is right now it's the only predefined source that core provides. It's access to post meta. And then the args are the key of the post meta, which is my custom data thing. So we're just presetting all of that. So if I save this now, switch back over here and refresh, because apparently that's how you do it, according to Mike. I should be able to insert this, but I think it's probably not, if I remember right, I don't think it's going to look right. Okay, so there is the thing I just installed, or inserted, but look over in the right-hand side in the block inspector. What does it say? Paragraph block, but this isn't a paragraph block, this is a show my data block. So the next part is going to help us with that. So we've set this up. So the last thing that we have to add is this isActive property. And the isActive property is super important. What this does is it checks to see is if a paragraph block is inserted and it has whatever is in this, like if this value matches this value, it's like, oh, well, that's this block. So now this is the active variation. Does that make sense the way I'm explaining that? So if the value of metadata bindings content args key matches metadata binding content args key, this value matches whatever this is, it's like, oh, that's a show my data block. So let's test that theory. Save this, refresh. Now let's see if I click on that. There we go. So now we have this. Now it's actually show my data. So that isActive is extremely important. The emojis are not.
First paragraph now show my data?
Yes. Because the attributes match the is active, right? So I can come in here and I can say, like, so the default block that gets inserted is always a paragraph block. So I can come in here and say, this empty block, I'm going to pick my content, I'm going to click on content, I'm going to make it my custom data, it's going to do this, and look, now it turned it into that. So we just finished the first recipe. Any questions on that? That was a super fast one. So, and questions in the back?
Now it doesn't match anymore. Will it revert back to the paragraph or still?
Sorry, I missed the first part?
So if you start typing and
Yep.
updating the content of your post meta,
Yep.
is it going to revert to a paragraph or
No.
just an update?
It has nothing to do with the value of the meta. It's the in the case that we're doing here, it's the key that matters. So when I'm bound the key of custom data to this block, that's what makes it the show my data block.
Once it connects, it doesn't connect.
It doesn't connect unless you change the key, which you'd have to come into the UI and disable it. But the value stays sort of outside of all that. Cool. Anyone else? Good. Yes.
So I can bind to anything I set up and choose.
That's a no, but yes. There are 4 blocks. Sorry.
Where would you use
You would use this if you want to, like, this is a perfect example. So let's say that you're using some sort of a custom field plugin that manages fields, and you wanted to show a bunch of stuff inside of a query loop. You could create a bunch of let's have an example of like an author bio, or so you could have a group of authors that are stored in post types. This is a really contrived example, and all this post meta that represents years they've been, whatever, like their byline, their date of birth, I don't know, whatever you want. That's all stored as post meta. You could create a number of bindings in your query loop template that would display all of that. So that's a really great example. But you can use it for basically anything. Sorry, let me retract that and say you can use it for any core meta, like any post meta that's been exposed to the REST API. Now there is a way to register your own custom sources, and that's where this gets really interesting, because you can create a custom source that provides any data that you want. And then you can bind it to one of the 4 blocks that currently support bindings.
If you're on a blog post, would you have seen under attributes category published date author?
You could, yeah.
Exposed in the
Well, if it's post meta, it's available. Okay, so it's not about the values, but it's about the keys. There is a recipe in here which dovetails nicely with this one, where I create a custom binding source. So you remember where it says, and sorry, this is blurry, but there's this like source thing. Well, this is the core post meta is a pre-built one, but we can make our own. And I did one where I bound the post excerpt to a paragraph block, but I had to create that custom binding source. And then once you do that, you can do really interesting things with that, like anything you want, really. Pull anything out of the database, pull it from an API. Super interesting stuff. Yes.
If you basically took this and duplicated it and just changed the key to a different post value, would the is active have to be changed?
It would. That's very astute of you. Yes, it would, because you would need to have, you would need to add another way of doing that. This is a very simple example. I have a plugin that's a query loop block variation that I'm adding a namespace. So that's a way of doing it. It won't affect anything, but it checks to see is the namespace and it's in like a class name what I want it to be. But what's really cool about is active is that you can do multiple things. So you could say, like, if the I don't know, whatever, if the source also matched, you can do this sort of thing. Right, so it checks for multiple things. That's not going to be right, but if I go, what is it, like this. So if those 2 things are the same, then this will be active. And that way, if you had a second source, even if you had common key names between the 2, like say you had post date and post date, why, I don't know, but they were from two different sources, you could still match this, but the source is different, right? So as long as whatever it is different, you're differentiating in some way, that is active it might need more things to make it the same, Sorry, rambling on. Cool, okay, well that was the first one. And so what's next? So now we want to do a really complicated one?
Yeah.
Is that what we want? All right. Okay, I have two. These are the most complicated ones. The interactive API gallery slider is pretty fun. Yeah. All right, so all right, let's do it. So we're probably not going to be able to even finish it, but we'll do our best. So let's get into here. Okay, and I will say this: you can come back to this at any time on your own time. Do any of these and at me if you hate them. So, so what this is going to do is we're going. Okay, so there's a lot. First of all, who knows what the Interactivity API is? Okay, who does not know and wants me to explain it briefly? And I'm not going to point and laugh, I promise. Okay, cool. So the Interactivity API is basically a front-end framework for WordPress that allows you to create interactivity via an API. So, and now we're moving on. No, it's Preact based. You don't need to know that, but it's very, very cool. Like, so if you have a React application, for example, like the way we used to do it is we would render a div, we'd inject that whole application into the div, and then like it's completely not editable. You know, it's just like it's like what Flash was. Everyone here remembers Flash. You just put it on the page and it was self-contained. And yeah, there you go. So with the Interactivity API, that allows us to create blocks that have these stores attached to them. So if I have blocks here, here, and here, and here, they can all talk to each other. They can pass data around to each other. What it allows us to do is create really complicated interfaces on the front end that are composable. So if your client says, oh, I love everything, but that button block should be at the bottom of the page, instead of having to recompile your whole application and redeploy, you just go into the site editor, move it to the bottom of the page, and it all just works. So it's really, really powerful. It's for things like button clicks and you know, yeah, shopping. Yeah, WooCommerce has some really interesting things that they're doing with it. Like the whole shopping cart is based on the Interactivity API. So it's very cool. We're not doing any of that today. We're building a gallery slider. Excuse me. Okay. Okay, so the first thing that we have to do is we have to tell our WordPress that our block is going to be using the interactivity. Well, actually, the first thing I have to do is find the source code. There we go. So, block.json. It's right here. This is the configuration file for our block. If you're not familiar with it, think of it as there is a supports, it's not in there, but I'll show you in a second. There's a supports property in here, right? And in here, it's how we opt into or opt out of even certain functionality for the block. Like for example, if you only wanted to have one instance of this block in any piece of content, you could say multiple and set it to false without that leading colon, like that. So this would mean once you've inserted this block, it'd be grayed out inside the block editor, inside the block inserter. That's just one of many things that we can do here. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some supports to this. I'm just going to copy and paste these, and we'll drop them in. Hey, Steve. So the first one is the most important. This one here says, hey, this block is going to use the interactivity mode, Interactivity API, right? The second two are just how we align things. I'm just adding that because it's for the gallery part. Oh, the next thing I have to do is cd into gallery slider and start the build process. We'll do that. Okay, so that's the first thing. Okay, so next we need to tell the scripts package, which is our build process, where to find a specific file, the Vue.js file, which is what's going to contain all of our information about the store and all our actions and things, and we'll talk about that stuff in a second, but everything that has to do with this interactivity that we're going to build. So we have to do this via a special key called VueScript module. If you're familiar with the Vue.js with blocks, there is a VueScript property, and then there's also this VueScript module. It's because interactivity mode the Interactivity API builds the scripts out as an ES module, which is a different way than we've been building stuff in WordPress for a long time. So just trust me that that's what you have to do. Because once you do this, you won't have to worry. The only other time where the whole module thing becomes a problem is when you want to use other packages, and I'll show you a workaround for that. Okay, so we're going to add this to our block.json. So right here down at the bottom, we're going to add that. So now the block.json, part of what it does is tell the block registration process what files does this block need? So we're gonna so the editor script is the JS file that registers the block and handles what it looks like in the block editor and things like that. Style is what it sounds like, just some editor styles. We have style, which is for front and back end. We have render, because this is a dynamic block. We're going to be processing it, rendering it in PHP on the front end. And then now we have ViewScript module, which is the ES module that will be loaded on the front end that contains all of our store interactivity via the API. I'm gonna do that joke as many times as I can. Okay, the next thing we have to do is modify the build processes a little bit. We have to pass this experimental modules flag. It says experimental. It is, I guess, sort of still experimental, but we're going to do that in our package JSON, not the lock, the package JSON. So we're going to get rid of the ones that are in there, and we're just going to replace these. Pay no attention to the block manifest thing that was in there. Okay, so all this is doing is just going to change the way that the scripts package builds out this piece of JavaScript. So because I'm actually running it, I have to stop it here anyways. So I'm going to start. So I don't know if you saw that, but when I ran it, not there. Anyways, it doesn't matter. It ran the script that I told it to run. Okay, so now we're set up. We're building. Everything's sort of the way it's supposed to be. So we're going to prepare the render.php, which is what handles the front end of this block. Now this is a dynamic block. This has nothing to do with the interactivity for the most part. There are some things in there that, anyways, but any dynamic block uses a render.php file. So I'm just going to grab this. And, oh wait, I think it's already done like that. So we have this stuff in here. It doesn't look like that.
Oh yeah, interactivity data.
Yeah, I need to add that. That doesn't seem right. No, it's not right. We're going to leave that. So this is what it should look like. I will insert a block here. We're going to add a new one of these. Nope, not that. Nothing like a live demo to find typos. Gallery slider. So gallery, what is this thing? Again, what do they name the stupid thing? Oh, there, who said that? Was that you? All right, yep. There you go. You got it. Thank you. All right, here you go. There we go. It's funny because like 2/3 of my workshops are like people solving the problems for me. If you've ever seen one of my live streams, it's exactly the same. So, okay, so where's gallery slider? Gallery slider is saw it. There we go. There we go back into posts. All right, so if I do this now, oops. Gallery slider. All right, great. Yay, thank you. That's the end of my workshop. Thanks for coming.
Great.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we have nothing going on here. This is just sort of the framework, right? That's what we're doing there. Okay, so now let's jump back over to here. So it should look like this. That's not actually correct because that's something we do later. But the next thing that we have to do is we have to tell render.php, we have to add these things called directives. So the Interactivity API has a concept of directives. If you're familiar with like Alpine.js or some other frameworks, it's similar. And so what these do is they are parsed by the block parser and things, and magic happens. I'm just going to leave it at that because it's magic. So what we want to do here is we're going to add this attribute to our wrapper class here. Right? I'm just going to add it there, and this is going to say, okay, that this is an interactive block, and the store name that's associated with this is going to be. I have an extra closing. Do I? Oh, I gotta turn this stupid Copilot off every single time. Snooze. There we go. It'll come back in 5 minutes. I'll be like, what? Okay, so this won't do anything. Like we won't see it. Actually, will we see anything on the front end? Let's take a look. I don't think we actually will. Not yet, because we're not doing anything. But let's just have a look here. Ooh, geez. So in here. Let's see if I can just inspect that and get us in the right spot. And so, okay, so that's all we're seeing in here. That's not surprising. Let's go back. Okay, next step. So all this is really saying is like, this is an interactive block. So now let's do some stuff. So now we want to define a store. So in our source Vue.js file, we're going to open that up. So source Vue.js. So what we have in here is a very typical way that stores are defined. The first thing that we're doing is we're retrieving the store function from the WordPress interactivity package. We're defining a store. We're calling it gallery slider. And then this is convention. It's not like it will not break if you do it a different way, but the convention is to have 3 objects. The first is called state. If you're familiar with data stores, React, Redux, any of that sort of stuff, it's the current, like the shape of the application, the state of the application, or And then we have actions. Actions are functions that are usually user initiated. So an on click, like on scroll, stuff like that, those would go in actions. And then we have callbacks, which are basically actions, but they're like not initiated by the user. And there's not really a reason for the differentiation there other than just like a mental model of this would be something like unload or like if you wanted to watch something. Yeah, some sort of listener, something that's not, that the user doesn't know anything about. It's just a way of keeping things organized. And this is how you'll see most of the examples out there in the world. So this little piece of code down here is just a really fun debugging thing because there's a proxy that's wrapped around the objects in the store. So you just have to, I'll show you. It's this weird JavaScript code that somebody on my stream gave me because they're smarter than I am. All right, so I talked about state, actions, and callbacks. We won't talk about that. I do want to talk about state versus context. So there's two very important concepts here. So especially in the Interactivity API. So the state is the state of the block, and the state is shared across all instances. So you don't want to have 2 gallery blocks moving like going on to the next image. When you click on the left one, you want the left one's image to move. You don't want the right one. But so if we were to handle that by a state, that state is changed across all instances of the store, whereas context is specific to the instance. That make sense? Yeah, okay. So this is an example here, but if I were to do this on, should I show that? Maybe I'll skip that for now. How much time do we have? 2:20, okay. So this is a function that will be called. So if we were to call this and we have a piece of state called current slide, when I change this, every instance of this block will get its current slide number changed. And that's not what we want at all, right? So it's an important concept to understand. And it makes more sense once you kind of screw it up once and then realize and then come back, which is what I do all the time. Okay, so we're going to do some context stuff. We're going to add, in our PHP, we're going to generate we're going to generate an array of items that are slides. So the number of slides that this gallery contains, the current slide it's on, and the total. Oh, sorry, this is a reference to each slide. This is the total number of slides and the current slide. So we're gonna just generate that in PHP, and then later on. Oh, that's where this is supposed to go. Oh, my blurring is all messed up here. I apologize. Grab this. So we're going to use this function called right here, and try to get this working properly. Oops. Okay. So this interactivity data WP context is really, it's a mouthful. What it does is it creates context for this particular block. So the way context works is, so we put it on the outer wrapper because any inner blocks inherit that context, or any inner elements inherit that context from it. So we can use that anywhere else, right? So if we were to refresh this, last time I did this, here's a funny story. Last time I did this, the function name was wrong, and when I refreshed the page, I got a fatal error, and then someone in the audience was like, the function name is wrong, and told me what it was, and then we were able to move on because I forgot. So now, it didn't break, which is great. So now if we look at here, we have this attribute down here. Sorry, can you see? There's a data WP context attribute that contains all that information. So the default state of context of our block. Can you see that in the back? You want me to? Yeah, you good? Okay. So this is just setting up the sort of the default values, right? So now we're going to set up some actions to change the active slide. So in our JavaScript, we're going to create 2 functions. I'm gonna go back over here. Oh, I better, you know what? I better save that and refresh just in case. For a guy that wrote all this code, I'm really worried it's not gonna break or it's not gonna work. Okay, so then in our actions, we're gonna add two functions. This is gonna be called previous slide, and it's gonna be called next slide. So that won't do anything in and of itself because we have to bind something in our application to these functions. And that's where am I adding this now? I don't know what I've done here, but all my blurs are all messed up on this one. I have to go back in here and look this. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna add another directive. And we're gonna add it to the button. So we're gonna add it to this button, the previous one, and we're also gonna add it. I just snoozed you. What's your deal? So what this is, so the way that directives work, or some of them are really straightforward in the sense of like it's like a data-wp-interactive. That's just what it is. So the data, it's always going to start with data because this is an HTML data attribute, and then it's going to be followed by WP, and then this will be what the thing is that you're trying to do. Now some of these, like the on, except what I think of, like I like to think of it as a parameter. Let me scroll that up so you guys can see it. So this is like an on event. So when something happens, we're going to respond to it, but we need to know what we're waiting for. In this case, it's a click. So it's on click. It could be on scroll, on blur. Any regular HTML sort of event like that will work, right? So what we're doing is on click, we're going to call one of our actions. And we do that by accessing the actions directly. We say, I'm going to do this so it's a little bit easier to read. Okay? So what this is saying is on click, we're going to run the actions.previousSlide function. And we're going to do the same thing on here. Would you mind just closing that door for me? Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And in this one, we're going to do next slide. All right. Okay, and so just check to make sure. So we got previous slide and next slide. So this is just going to console log stuff. So we've built it. We're going to refresh it. We're going to hit console, and then if there is a God in heaven, it works. There we go. So, yay! 5 minutes? 5 minutes? Oh my God. Okay. Okay, so that's cool. All right, I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit here. I'm going to stop rambling. Okay, so the next part is we are going to find the thing. Okay, so what I'm going to do, just going to paste this stuff in, and I'm going to explain it. Okay, we're just going to paste this in, explain it. So what I'm doing here is I'm pulling get context from the Interactivity API. This is just a way of getting the current context from our block. Remember the stuff that we defined earlier? It's going to retrieve that. I'm holding it in a variable called CTX, call it whatever you want, and then all I'm doing is taking the current slide variable that is defined over here, and I'm incrementing it. Okay, so that's all that's doing. Now, I can demo that for you, or we can keep moving so you can see this thing actually work. Okay, cool. I figured everyone in the room would figure that out. Okay, and so the next thing that I'm going to do is we're going to we're going to use another directive on the slider container, which is right here. And what it's going to do is it's going to say, it's another one of those like directives with a parameter. So we're going to say style. So we're going to bind the transform, like the style attribute with the transform CSS selector rule. And we're going to bind that to a function called state current pause, which is not defined yet. So I'm going to grab it, put it in, and talk about this in a second. I apologize for how fast I'm having to go now. But so this is what's called a JavaScript getter function. And all this is going to do is when you call it state.currentPause, it's going to just return something for you, right? So that's what the get keyword means. So what this is going to do is this is going to get the current context. We're going to get the current slide. We're going to translate the current slide times 100%. And it's going to move things around. And in order to show that, I'm going to need to put a cover block in here. Yay! And then we'll put another one in. Where's the cover block? Cover block. I just put a cover block inside a cover block, didn't I? Oh, dumb. Okay. I'm moving too fast. I can't do it. Okay, and we're going to just, how do I change this now? Overlay. We're going to pick that color. No, God, get out of here. Okay. See? Okay, test it there. Okay, so if we save this now,
Gallery slider.
of course it's not in the gallery slider. Who said that? You? Oh, you already got it back. Okay. Okay. So now if we have this, we should see we've got our little gallery sliders in here and see it's moving. Is that still not inside of there? What's going on here? Weird. Anyways, so you can see the translate is happening. I think I probably screwed something up because I'm trying to go a bit too fast here.
You have some undefined stuff.
You have undefined stuff. What are you talking about? Oh, CTX current. Oh, you know why? I'll tell you why. Current slide is actually spelled with a T in real life. So if we look at this, so you can see we have the current slide so that the translate is doing its thing, right? And moving it along. Okay, cool. And okay, so okay, so there's how much time do I have left, Sean? Do I have? I'm trying to be. How much time do I have left? 1 minute.
Show the rest.
Then we're done. There we go. So I can maybe I'll just talk to it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's burned. It's badly burned. So what I'm doing in here. So what you need the takeaway that I want you to have is an understanding of how directives work. Because this is how you connect your store to your markup. Now, behind the scenes, all of those directives trigger some really cool stuff with the HTML API tag processor. Yeah, and it's really cool stuff. You can add, it adds all of these things. Anyways, that's not very helpful. But basically, I don't know how to go through this in a minute. So let's see. So there's some functionality that we've setting up around being able to determine whether or not there is a previous or next slide, and then we're binding that to a disabled attribute, which makes sense. We have a total slides thing in here, so you can actually show 0 of X or 1 of 10 or whatever. We're creating. This is a callback, and what this does is on each slide it calls itself. And it adds itself as a reference to all the slides that are known, and then this is just some funky stuff for like removing itself. Like we're never going to be removing this in real time, but that's what that does. And then in the Interactivity API, what I'm doing is I am filtering the render block. So there's a render block filter that you can use for all blocks or for individual blocks by passing the name of the block here. And what this is doing is this is checking to see is the block a block cover, an image, or a media and text block. And if it is, we're adding some that init method, that init function that I was talking about. So when the block is initialized, when that code is actually run, that callback gets run. It adds itself to the list in the array, so we have a sense of how long the array is. This is actually redundant because this is a child of the outer context stuff. We don't need to do that, but this is a really great example of the tag processor, which is like doing this with regex would require an entire team of
Missing a method.
What's that?
Sometimes you still do when it's missing a method.
Yeah.
There's a few things still missing from the HTML tag process.
Yeah, there is. But it's really good for removing and adding attributes, adding classes, things like that. It's really good. There's an extension for this, or I guess it's more of another flavor of it where we can insert and remove actual nodes of HTML, which is really cool.
So it knows what tag it is and stuff.
Yeah, so this is checking the next tag. So for this next tag, I'm going to get all the list of classes, and then for each class, I'm going to check to see is the class on that node in this list, and if it is, it does something. If it doesn't, it just continues on to the next one. Yes.
You were talking about how the WP Interactive is redundant when it's a child code of
Yes.
The thing. So I happen be building something, discovered that the logs were spitting out. Like, hey, you're missing all this stuff. I said, what is this? And figured out that, you have to kind of put it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's any...
Is that, sorry, so you're saying you didn't do this and it was yelling at you? Yeah, the child block?
If you don't put that interactivity in the child block,
Mm-hmm.
it sort of triggers errors.
Interesting, okay. I'd like to see that because in my experience, you don't need to do that because it should inherit it, but there's been some changes to the API since I built this part, so that's interesting to know. I mean, it doesn't hurt, right? So just put it in, but yeah. I don't know. Do I have time for questions? Yeah. Sean's like, sure, why not? Try.
No, so we got 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay.
Just waiting to do a drop 2:30.
Okay. Cool. Does anyone have questions? Because if anyone has questions, I have a couple bags remaining. If anybody wants, or if you just want a bag, you can have a bag. No, you know. Oh yes, there we go.
Do you know if the Interactivity API is ever going to get like a standard if, like what we had with Alpine, where you could do?
Oh, interesting. I don't know off the top of my head. I do know that there's a lot of directives that I'm not even remotely covering in here. There's directives that allow you to loop. I think there might be some conditionals that they're working on. I have to look back at that though. It's still a fairly new API, but it's with what we can do now, it's extremely powerful. But that's an interesting question. I'll definitely find that out, and I can follow up with you if you want.
You're saying you can import packages and stuff.
Oh, right. Yes. Okay, so the importing of packages. So because when you're using, I'm just gonna throw that on the floor. Because this is building as ES modules, every package that you import to it has to also support ES module bundling, right? So if you were to do something like import API fetch, which I think is just, I don't know if the word is, yeah, sure. I think it's just that. This will fail, and it'll actually tell you, hey, you can't do that. That's from, not equals. The build won't even run, I don't think. You have to use it. So what you do is, in WordPress, we have a WP global that sits on the window object, and that's on the front end and the back end. You have to enqueue it for the front end. So what you'd need to do is access it like, you'd have to say const API fetch equals WP, not WebKit, WP dot, I think it's whatever it is, right? API fetch. And then you would access it that way. Now, the downside of this is that you have to actually also enqueue this manually. So one thing that you could do in this particular case is in the, I didn't do it here because we didn't have time, but inside of this callback here, you can actually just run it, like enqueue script and the name of that script, because it needs to be part of the dependencies that this script relies on. And if you're on the front end, the API fetch package is not like enqueued automatically in the front end, so you have to get that enqueued. But that's the way that you would interact with any of the other packages that WordPress supports without breaking your build. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right, that's it. Oh, sorry, you have a question?
One last one.
Yes.
Is this stable enough to use in production right now?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, there are some really, really cool things being done with it. It's very, very cool. Pew Research is doing some amazing things on it. The WooCommerce team is doing, like, all their checkout stuff is all built in. It's really, really powerful, and it's only going to get better. There's some. If I had an hour more, I could tell you all kinds of fun, really cool things about it. But absolutely use it. And you have a bag when you if you wanna come up and get it. And I have one more. Does anyone want it? First person to raise. Oh, you had your hand up first. And there's more at the .com booth. So, all right. Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm a developer. I don't do sports. So, all right. Well, thanks for coming. Appreciate it.